Hello and welcome back to my channel. For this card I am using the Magic Picture Changer die and several Lawn Fawn products. To start with, I have 2 panels of paper that will fit each of these dies. The big one is the first window that you'll see and the smaller one is the second one. For this I am using my Fox Costumes Before and After stamp set. On the big panel, the one you'll see first, I am using the plain Fox and I'm just stamping him roughly in the center. And then on the smaller panel, I am using the fox in the cupcake costume. Next, I'm creating masks for each of the foxes. I'm just using Post-it notes because that was what was on my desk and I didn't want to dig for my masking paper. These don't actually fully stick, but it's not too bad. And now I have this grass stencil and I am using Mowed Lawn Distress ink just to give the little foxes something to stand on. I do try to keep roughly the same placement and height for the grass on both panels. That way it looks more like a seamless transition. Of course, this was far from perfect, but unless you're really focusing on it, you're not going to notice. Next up, I have my cloud stencil and my Salty Ocean Distress Oxide ink. This is another area where I do try to keep the clouds in the same position and spaced out the same, all that stuff. It's not perfect. I think the clouds are probably less perfect than the grass, but that's still fine. Like, clouds move, you're not really going to notice. They're roughly in the same place. And these top clouds up here, I knew that this probably wasn't going to show, but I wanted to make sure that by the time I cut it out, I didn't really have to worry about going back over and inking anything else. So yeah, I over-inked, but it's fine. To color my foxes, I am using my E90 Copic markers. This is my favorite color combination for a more reddish brown animal. I used to always put my lightest color down in somewhat of the shadow areas, and then when I felt good about where I placed my shadows, I would go back in with my darkest color. And then after that, after I was comfortable with that, I would start doing my lightest color everywhere, and then I would go in with my mid-tone to create the shadows. And then I would go back in with my darkest color to darken the shadows, and then I'd work back from darkest to lightest. And at this point, I have been coloring long enough that I usually feel like I have a pretty good idea where I want to put my shadows, so I've been skipping over that whole, color the shadows in with the lightest color or mid-tone. For my whites, I used E40. I know that's not a white color, but I didn't want to leave it stark white. I'm going to add a little bit of R30 to the ears. I'm going to do the exact same thing as I color the fox and the cupcake. This card was actually requested by my niece. She wanted a card for one of her friends, and the direction she gave me was fox, orange, and blue. So it was a little bit of a struggle for me because I don't usually pair orange and blue together, and ultimately, I did have to add yellow in there just to get it to look right to me. Hopefully she likes the card. I didn't give it to her directly. I gave it to her dad to give her. So we'll see. But yeah, this card inspired by my niece and her friend. For my blue color combination, I'm using B12, 14, and 18. This is a color combination that I don't use very often. I think probably because I usually stick to very light blues. I really need to branch out. When I color cupcake liners, I always kind of struggle. I have a rough idea of where things should go, but I don't know that they ever really turn out, especially in such a small area. I'm using YR04 as my orange for the sprinkles, and then Y15 for the yellow for the sprinkles. I do believe the blue that I used was the B14. All right, I'm using some R markers, just keeping the cherry real light, real simple. I didn't blend it out or anything. And then I'm using E50 just to add a little bit of color variation to the little whipped cream on the fox's head and the icing. Now it's time to cut, and I did tape my die down a little bit so that it didn't move in the die cutting machine because that would have upset me. And here I did kind of play around with placement a little bit to try to make sure that they both matched. Now that my pieces are cut, I can fold at the score lines. Now this was super difficult for me because my die cutting plates are old and I really need to get new ones because it's affecting the cut quality, or I guess here the embossing quality. And also, I need some thin score tape because I do not recommend using liquid glue for this. It takes a little bit longer to dry. It's a little more messy. Yeah. So I glued the flaps down. I'm placing the smaller piece inside the bigger piece, and then I'm just stuffing the little tabs inside the back piece. And that creates the little magic picture changer. Now, if you've never seen this die before, for some reason, it's been out a while, check the Lawn Fawn YouTube channel because they have like in-depth tutorials. I can't even talk. In-depth tutorials on how to do these things. Now, taking the panel that I cut from the Magic Picture Changer add-on, I am going to make this look roughly like the background that the fox is on. And this is something that I recommend doing at the, start of your project if you know exactly what you're doing. I am really bad for just winging it the whole way. And this was one of those cards that I really didn't know what I was doing when I started. And so, yeah, everything was kind of backwards in this card. Or maybe not backwards, but it wasn't really planned to start with. I just did like one piece at a time until everything came together. Sort of chaos crafting. Now that my front panel is inked up, I'm going to work on the little tab. The Magic Picture Changer die does come with its own tab, but I like the one that said pull. I'm just inking this up with the same blue that I used for the clouds. And I am going to glue this directly onto the little tab. And then I am going to insert the little letters that were cut out from the word pull. But for these, I decided to color them red. I was sort of on the fence whether I wanted to color them red or I wanted to color them orange. I opted for red, which this is one of the colors I used for the cherries, only because I said cherries. There's not multiple cherries. I should just go back to bed. Oh, goodness. Anyway, I used red because of the cherry. I didn't want that to be the only red thing on the card. Now, I will say this bit was super fiddly, and I was grateful to have my little pokey tool and also my reverse tweezers. Now that that is complete, I am going to glue my little front panel on. Now, initially, I did not put enough glue on there. I did have to add a little bit more glue than that, but I didn't want it to like ooze into the moving mechanism. All right, so here, again, I have decided that I needed more grass and more clouds, and this is on the actual, like, back panel. So, again, trying to line things up as best as I can, and this, again, is not perfect. I guess there was probably not really any way I was going to get it perfect. I didn't do all the things at one time, and since I didn't, or I guess I wasn't able to tape things down exactly, things moved, and it's whatever. It still looks like grass and clouds. I think I probably critique my own work just a little bit too much. I never notice the little imperfections in other people's cards. So I'm assuming that most people won't realize them in my cards. I just pointed out because, I know how it is to stress about, well, this doesn't look quite right, and maybe I should redo it, and just don't stress about it. In the end, your card will probably be appreciated because you gave someone a card. Now that my background panel is done, I am going to pop up this little picture changer mechanism on some foam tape, and I'm doing this just to make so that the little pull tab is a little bit easier to pull, which I'm not really sure that I had to do this because the pull tab is hanging off the edge of the card a little bit. Now, if I had done my card in picture orientation, that would have been a little bit more of an issue. All right, for my oranges, I'm using YR02, YR04, and YR07. When it comes to orange color combinations, I'm just unsure about them. I feel like this needs more or something different. I'm not really sure. If you have a favorite Copic color combination, please let me know. I'd love to check it out. All right, for the blues for my presents, I use the exact same blues I used before, which are B12, 14, and 18. I'm trying to keep all the presents slightly different. These were stamped from various Lawn Fawn sets. I will link them below, but Lawn Fawn has several sets that have little gifts in them. I tried to make them look more varied, which is why, you know, there's bigger ones, smaller ones, and even a round one. I did keep some of the blues a little bit lighter, so I just skipped using the darkest color. That way it gave it a little bit more variation, and you know, not everything looked like just a large mass of blue and orange. And I also popped in some yellow here and there, and that was, I believe, my Y00. And then I paired that with, I don't know if it was Y15 or Y13, I can't remember. To give a little bit of variation to the gifts, I also do dots or stripes, and you know, I don't always love the way it looks exactly, but when it's in a sea of other presents, it kind of works. In this little present, I decided to leave mostly white. I just added some blue and orange dots. And then I am coloring the bow in yellow. And honestly, for some reason, it reminds me of Wonder Bread. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. I'm going back in with one of my white gel pens, and I am just going to add a few little dots and lines in various places just to help break up the color a little bit more. Next, I'm going to color my balloons. This is something I struggle with a little bit. I tried to make them look like you could see through them a little bit. So for this back one, the little orange balloon, I did lines into the yellow and the blue balloon. And I used my darkest color for this, for that orange, because I wanted it to actually show. And then I just proceeded to color the other two balloons like I would normally. Now, I only show you this one group of balloons because I have 5 and they're all the same colors, just in different orders, and I didn't really feel like that was something anybody'd want to watch. Now I'm adding little highlights with my white gel pen, and that's it for that. Now I have this freebie stamp set and this fish tank ink. Now you cannot get the little all the hats stamp anymore, I don't think. Oh, real quick here, I don't know what happened. I think I forgot to push play. But I did splatters. You've seen it before. Anyway, I stamped a little happy birthday with the fish tank ink. And now I'm just adding these other 2 foxes that I colored. These, again, I will link the stamp sets. I was just digging through my stamps to find the foxes. I had to add some foam tape on the back of this fox. He actually has 2 layers of foam tape. And then this one here, I think I only added 1 layer of foam tape. And then I have the little party hats from All the Hats stamp set, and I'm giving them to the 2 little foxes on either side. I did vary the things, like how I adhered them. Some are adhered with liquid adhesive and they are flat, and then some of them are popped up on foam tape. Now, I will say that with the little presents and stuff that overlap each other, I did liquid glue them together in the placement that I wanted, and then I added foam tape on the back. And I did this to make sure that there wasn't little tiny bits of foam tape that I had to cut, or, you know, no foam tape was poking out anywhere. Next, I have my balloons. Now, these, again, it's a combination of foam tape and liquid adhesive. I cut the strings off, and I did this for a couple reasons. One, it'd be super hard to fussy cut that out. And 2, these balloons were made to look like they were trailing behind something that was moving, and that didn't really work for what I was doing. So I'm just adding my lines in with a fine liner. This is Not really something I love. It's not that difficult, but don't really love it. And then I added some little string ends to the fox's hand to make it look like he was holding it. After that, my card is complete. Thank you all so much for watching. I will be back with another video soon.